Lots of entrepreneurs blame their busyness for being fat. What advice do you have for them?
You're underperforming. If you're fat, your brain is not working as well as it could be. So there's kind of a tendency to think that people who are in shape or carrying extra muscle or whatever it is are meatheads. And an element of that can be true. But when you actually look at the research, people who tend to work out on a regular basis, their neurological system just works better. Everything's firing faster. It's more connected. You've drained out most of the toxins because whenever you're doing some sort of exercise, you're cycling all of your blood, lymph, all this stuff needs to happen. So there are different ways to go about it. I mean, you can do the cold plunge sauna thing if you really hate exercise. But for the most part, most people, if they want to live for a long time, perform really well. You don't have to do much more than walking most days. Just do a lot of walking. If you look at long-lived people across the world, a lot of them are not like hitting the iron in the gym, you know, or like doing advanced things. They're just like walking to work or carrying baskets on their heads, walking up hills into their 90s. Like this is stuff that we're designed to do. And I think we overcomplicate things. Also, another part of the problem is like in our society, we're rewarded for busyness and kind of this hypervigilance, overproduction, rat racy type behavior. We're rewarded in monetary terms, in terms of status, in terms of, you know, being there and being available for your employees, your partners, your clients, whatever that is. And so that leads people to dangerous places because if you lose your health, then everything else falls apart pretty quickly.
If you have your health, you can have 1,000 things that are important to you. But if you don't, only one thing is important to you.
Right.
Some shit like that.
Yeah. And that's true. It's like, I think about that whenever I get a sore throat or something like that. And it's the only thing I can feel. It's the only, I can't fall asleep.
Or like your toe hurts.
Yeah, your toe hurts.
Right. Your little toe.
I'm not thankful for my toes right now. I should be just like in immense gratitude for all the things that are working. But that's not how our brains or our emotions work at all. We focus on the stuff that's out of whack. And also we have big blind spots, too, especially as entrepreneurs. And so it's important to recognize that we're rewarded for short-term things, but this is a long game. You got to play that long game. And that definitely includes taking care of your health.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's this other adage of life is short. And I think it can feel that way, especially as you get older. But the reality is it's very long.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, right? If you make a bad mistake, you realize how long it is.
Yes.
You mentioned that exercising and being in good shape increases cognitive performance. I feel like there's a point of diminishing return there.
Oh, yeah.
And my experience in doing endurance athletics is that there are days when you're pushing well past your baseline because that's how you increase your distance.
Yep.
And I am now acutely aware of I could keep going, but the rest of the day is going to suck if I do this.
Yeah.
And I do not get clarity. I get fog.
The following day also might be trashed, right? Depending on how far you push that.
So do you have a mechanism or rule or kind of metric for that? Can you push, you know, let's talk in cardio world, or I guess it could be any type of exercise, but do you push 5% past your baseline? Do you stay at your baseline? How do you grow and also maintain cognitive performance?
Yeah. Well, that's an awesome question because there's so many different factors to consider. And it's all around like, what are your, let's say the goals of the season, right? Because if you want to stay in top marathon running shape, like you don't want to stay in that shape forever. Like that's going to burn you out and not ultimately be good for you. Whereas if you focus on that for a season or half the year or something like that, then you can trend toward training and performance that you're looking for. You don't want to peak too early, right? You don't want to peak too late. You don't want to get injured. So especially as we get a little more advanced with age, like in your 20s, maybe you can get away with just pushing it and going harder. But, you know, as you reach your 30s and your 40s, especially for go-getters like us, the tendency is to, like, we usually win by pushing harder and pushing through pain,
right?
By being in that uncomfortable state. But there's another side of training, which is trying to be as comfortable as possible while you're training. So kind of like zone 2. If you're thinking about the zones, it would be zone 2, where you're keeping your heart rate relatively low. You're able to, the way that I measure it without devices generally is, can you breathe through your nose and maintain your pace? And trying to build up the capacity of that, I could do this all day pace without redlining it. Building up that capacity takes a lot of time. And that's kind of like the fat burning zone or whatever. And that's not exactly right. But the more that you can spend time in that zone, the more likely you are to get benefit without stressing your system and getting into that highly parasympathetic state where you're just running on stress hormones and burning yourself out. So like the challenge becomes, do I run a 10 miler today when I was scheduled for 15 or 20? When I turned 40, I re-examined my goals and I'm like, what exactly am I doing here?
Yeah.
Because carrying more muscle becomes problematic, right? Like your joints can give out if you're too top heavy and you want to continue endurance training. So this is a long-winded answer to your question, but it's based around where you want to peak and when.
I think that's life, thinking about the trade-offs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I fundamentally, and I say this often, but I fundamentally don't believe in right or wrong or good or bad. I believe those are relative constructs to an outcome that you might be after.
Yeah.
Right. And so you look at, is running 15 miles healthy? Is running 30 miles good for you? And the answer is it's good if I'm training for a 50-mile ultra, right? Or 100-mile ultra. And it's probably not good if I'm doing it every day and that's my mechanism for exercise.
Yeah.
Probably.
So if you're trashed, whether you feel that way before you lace up your shoes or you hit the gym that day, like it's important to check in.
Mm-hmm.
And on the days when your body is just not ready for that, you shouldn't push it because that's when you get injured. That's when things happen that are regrettable. For the most part, if you target those days when you're really feeling good and swing for the fences, go for that PR, like do that. But ultimately, if you look at the pro athletes, for example, who do really well later in their careers, it's not because they're getting stronger or faster. In fact, the opposite is happening. It's because they're recovering better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they realize that the older you get, the harder it is to recover, and the longer it takes, the more you have to do. And also, you aren't rewarded as much for pushing it to that ultimate level. You can't get away with that anymore. So you need to be smarter about it. Ultimately, I think if you want to simplify everything, it's really prioritizing sleep. If you can prioritize sleep, and it's a really boring answer, but if you can do that, then you're doing exactly what all the top performing athletes and performers and actors and everyone else is doing. It's not that you have private chefs or like all this biohacking gear. It's really that you're dialed in and you have a routine that's such that, you know, when you show up, the automatic thing that you do is the right thing.
So speaking of routines that involve lots of sleep, do you think that Brian Johnson's crazy?
I don't think he's crazy for the sleep part. I love that he talks about that and prioritizes it. But having blood boys, I think, is ethically and morally a little gray area at best. It's certainly like some of his. So the way that I think about it is the internet started off, especially early in the blogosphere and stuff like that, kind of like a library. And now it's like a circus. It's just absolutely insane. And all these hysterics. And, you know, having hung out with Brian a few times in person, the on-camera version is often different than like the real life version. And I enjoyed being with Brian and kind of like asking him a few questions in person. It's very thoughtful. But I think a lot of the marketing spin and the videos that come out and the clips or whatever, and some of the stuff that he says is doing what it's meant to do, which is just kind of get people riled up and talking about. One thing that's wild to me, though, is that I was like the young guy when we started, and a lot of other folks had been doing it for a while, whether they were authors or writers, scientists, that sort of thing. So now they've been doing it for, 30 years, some of them, with deep expertise in longevity. What used to be called quantified self is now kind of called biohacking, but, real scientists and people who know what they're talking about. Whereas the biohacking world and kind of like the internet celebrity world is driven by people who have a lot of hype and a lot of attention right now. Yeah. And like this dude, Brian Johnson, for example, was crushing it in business for many years.
Sold his business payments. So he built Braintree and sold it to PayPal. Which is my world, right? Yeah. So I've known of him for a long time because I respect him for building that.
Sure.
But he then went on his own personal health journey, and it's really only been the last 2 years where he's hyperbolized biohacking.
Well, and that's the thing. So it's like he was a business guy neglecting his health for the vast majority of his entire life, and that's his expertise. And the tendency is, especially for smart, driven people with resources, is to say, like, I'm an expert here, so I've got to be an expert here. I must be the smartest person in the world or the healthiest person in the world, or like that sort of hype is a little bit ridiculous to me. Having interviewed, hundreds of people who are true experts who have been doing this for decades, it's kind of shocking to see how like the entire world turns its head toward one person who's been doing it for like 2 years or 4 years and says that they're the best. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, he's got a good marketing spin for sure.
He does. And ultimately, I hope that this is all for good and encourages people to sleep more and do the simple things. But I definitely disagree with him about certain pieces, whether it's the vegan plant-based piece or the, ultimately transhumanist agenda and AI and integrating that into the human body. Like, I am very much a Luddite as far as it goes to that, or very conservative on the end of like, I don't think we should be jacking into the matrix anytime soon.
Well, let's talk about the diet side of things. So the wild diet did wildly well.
Yeah.
Carnivore, vegetarian, pescatarian, eat fat, don't eat fat, have dairy, don't have dairy. What's the right diet?
All of it. It's all right. It's all wrong. It's the thing is, these conversations have been going on for a lot longer than people realize. Mm-hmm. And so when I was writing the wild diet, I was looking into, well, how long have been people talking about like low carb or eating mostly meats or eating mostly vegetables? And it's like people have been having this exact argument for well over 100 years, longer than that. You look at different religions and things like that, and you're supposed to eat this meat, but not that meat. And in certain countries, it's like not really spiritually acceptable to eat certain meats or animals, while other ones are, including rodents or bugs, are totally on the menu. And so
weird.
As far as humans go, I think it's most important to subtract the stuff that is obviously killing us right now, which is the newfangled processed foods. The shockingly low quality of food in America is something that like you don't really realize as an American until you leave America. Right? Like a lot of people go to Europe for the first time.
Oh my God.
Or South America. And it's like
Australia.
You're eating like a pig and you're eating all these baked goods and these sourdough breads and drinking beer and whatever it is. And you're losing weight, like getting healthier as you do. The reason for that is our toxic burden here in America is just absolutely off the charts. And the standards that we have for our food are so low compared to other countries that we can't even export the same version of our drinks, packaged food, snacks and chips to other countries because these second and third world countries have higher standards than we do for our food. So it's important to recognize that you have to put your shields up and really redefine your relationship with what it's like to eat food in the modern